The horrifying truth about personal hygiene of medieval peasants. The Middle Ages saw a rise in population and the development of new commercial opportunities. That opened up some doors but also presented some challenges. One of them was bad hygiene among people and within the cities. How bad was the situation? How do people maintain their hygiene? Let's find out how horrifying it really was. The golden era of development, stability, and power was in ruins with the fall of the Roman Empire, the division between the West and the East, the invasion of barbarian peoples, and the change of peoples in Europe brought about by the Great Migration. The aqueducts supplying clean water to the towns were either destroyed or severely damaged, since those who understood how to maintain them were dead, dealing possibly the harshest blows to health and hygiene. What is known so far? Medieval hygiene did exist, even if it was considerably less sophisticated than what modern people take for granted. Despite living in a time before indoor plumbing, shampoo, and nail salons, people practiced good hygiene. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do. Peasants particularly suffered, since they frequently couldn't afford luxuries like several outfits. Personal hygiene in the Middle Ages meant maintaining cleanliness in any way you could, even if it wasn't convenient. Overall, the struggle for cleanliness in medieval Europe was winning. Disease was caused by an excess of trash and ineffective waste management techniques. Such waste increased the number of rodents, fleas, and lice, which ultimately led to disease and even epidemic. In the Middle Ages, hygiene centered on frequent bathing and the use of herbs and flowers to ward off pests and impart pleasant scents. Peasants who couldn't afford these items took fewer baths and lived closer together in squalor. During their periods, ladies in the Middle Ages used a range of commonplace items due to feminine hygiene concerns. These historical hygiene facts demonstrate that despite the evident and sometimes disagreeable distinctions between medieval life and modern life, peasants made every effort to maintain their cleanliness. Most peasants seldom bathed, while some never did. Peasants had to make do with considerably less, whereas many members of the upper class could take a bath in a hot tub, and many middle-class individuals used public baths. Bathing took a lot of work, because there was no flowing water, and peasants had to manually carry water from wells or rivers to their dwellings. Many individuals had to take showers with little water that was sometimes not hot. Those who lacked a suitable space indoors took their baths outside. Since many peasants worked by hand all day, taking a bath helped them get rid of perspiration that smelled bad and prevented lice and fleas. When they did use soap, it frequently contained an alkaline solution, such as a combination of salt and lime. Some peasants chose not to wash at all, since it needed so much labor to take a bath. Although they were relatively uncommon, most peasants found time to take a bath sometimes. Use of chamber pots. Because there was little access to running water in the Middle Ages, peasants used outhouses or chamber pots. Peasants did not have the luxury of using toilets that were made out of a seat with a hole over an aperture, leading to a cesspit, as did those who lived in castles. As an alternative, the poorer classes used outhouses and sometimes had to share them with the neighborhood. Those without access to outhouses made use of chamber pots. They utilized garbage buckets if they could not afford such items. Then, people dumped their waste containers and chamber pots into the river or neighboring cesspools. They utilized straw, grass, moss, or hay to wipe themselves down instead of toilet paper. Before the advent of contemporary sanitation concepts, some individuals thought sickness was not caused by the waste itself, but rather the stench of the garbage. According to historians, some people may have emptied the contents of outdoor chamber pots into the window or onto the street to get rid of the odor. The habit of emptying chamber pots outside the home and urinating oneself in public was frowned upon by society, and laws were passed to prohibit them. However, occasionally people violated the regulations, resulting in dirty streets and compromised water supplies following rainstorms. The laundry habits. Those who could afford more than one set of clothes would wash their clothes once every week. Peasants frequently only had one pair of clothes, even though individuals in medieval periods commonly wore layers of clothing to avoid cleaning outerwear too frequently. Heavy wool clothing was worn over the undergarments, which were composed of linen and worn near the skin. People were aware that cleaning their clothes kept parasites at bay, and etiquette guides recommended daily underwear changes. However, that frequently wasn't an option for peasants. Every week, while cleaning their other clothes, those who could afford more than one pair of clothes changed into new clothes. When the weather permitted, many peasants slept naked at night, necessitating even fewer clothes. When peasants couldn't afford to send their clothes to a professional laundress, they conducted their laundry by putting their clothes in the river and washing them there with lye soap. Unfortunately, human waste, trash, and runoff from animals' feces in the streets frequently polluted medieval waterways. Peasants frequently deloused each other. It was common for medieval people, particularly peasants, to cope with fleas and lice. Because parasites were such an issue, comb manufacturers started making their teeth finer so that people could comb their hair and eliminate dirt and lice. People would frequently meet together to delouse one another while performing tasks with their fingers. As odd as it may sound, delousing groups served as a form of social interaction for peasants. However, lice didn't just infest hair, they also infested clothes, which need delousing as well. Due to the high demand for women who could delouse hair and clothing, participants of the Third Crusade brought them with them on their voyage. Communal cesspits contained waste from outhouses and chamber pots. The peasants' waste eventually ended up in cesspits, whether it was initially disposed of in an outhouse or a chamber pot. Sometimes a lot of people would build up several outhouses that would empty into a communal cesspit or share a single bathroom. People tossed their trash into the pits in addition to waste, which increased the odor. These cesspits were usually emptied by some unfortunate worker, but they frequently leaked and contaminated the soil and the groundwater. Rivers that provided water for drinking, bathing, and laundry may have also been contaminated. Cesspits had to be set back from residences according to regulations, yet they did not protect residents from the smell. Staying clean in medieval times was extremely difficult due to the foul-smelling, waste-filled holes, widespread disregard for the laws requiring people to empty chamber pots, the waste of horses and farm animals passing through town, and the rats, mice, and other vermin drawn to the mess. In the morning, peasants frequently washed their hands and faces. Peasants in medieval times liked to maintain themselves as clean as they could despite the difficulty. In addition to being a source of pride, many people saw maintaining cleanliness as standard politeness. Popular etiquette urged individuals to wash their hands and faces right after getting up, and to keep doing so throughout the rest of the day. Since it didn't take much water, which they would have had to get via laborious work and bring to their homes, even peasants could accomplish it. Washing their hands before and after a meal was particularly crucial for peasants because they didn't use utensils and instead ate with their hands. Peasants used straw for bedding, which attracted vermin and fleas. Due to their relative comfort and insulation, straw mattresses were popular among medieval peasants. While peasants occasionally replaced the straw within their beds, many did not, and bugs and vermin drawn to the straw lingered there for extended periods. These mattresses were common among peasants who regularly experienced bedbugs, fleas, lice, and rodent infestations in the straw. People combined fragrant plants and flowers with straw to counteract this, including mint, chamomile, and lavender. Peasants also had linen sheets and woolen blankets to cover themselves while they slept if they could afford it. Women in the countryside used rags, moss, or twigs as sanitary products. Historians think women resorted to utilizing a variety of devices to collect blood during their periods, even though nothing is known about the subject. Many women likely used rag pieces they tore up. According to other theories, some women may have used absorbent moss as a pad, or a small twig wrapped in cloth strips as a tampon. Another possibility is that some women did nothing and just let their blood stain their clothes. Religious authorities stigmatized menstruation, which led many women to feel they had to cover it up. To cover up any odors, they could have brought scented plants or flowers with them. However, given that medieval women didn't live for very long, and that many peasant women led hard lives, including heavy labor and scant nutrition, it's possible that women had fewer periods during their brief lives than women today. This ends our history lesson for today. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel to see more interesting information like this.